everyone, it's Maddie. Welcome back to my channel. And as you probably can tell by the title of this video, this is really another part of my life, like I said, that I am fascinated by, and this is something I kind of wanted to share about. I think way back when I first made videos, I believe I had kind of shared a little bit of my ancestry, and I wanted to delve more into Ancestry DNA and kind of how I did that test 4.5 years ago and kind of what the results are, as well as something new called traits. And the traits thing on Ancestry DNA is something you do have to pay for, but it delves into more of things like specific genotypes that make up your hair color, eye color, if you carry the gene for male pattern baldness, interesting things like that. I'll delve into each one of those kind of for this video and briefly share my ancestry. But before I delve into that, I just want to say thank you to those who prayed for me and sent me good vibes that everything would be okay from my accident. As you probably can tell, my elbow does not look bruised anymore. I am 15 days post-accident, and I'll insert some pictures here. If you didn't see any pictures or anything like that, I don't remember if I've showed pictures in my previous video when I talked about the accident. I don't think I did. But that's what my car looked like, and I have sent it off to scrap. That is now all said and done. Everything's cleared out, and I am currently in the process of hunting for a new vehicle. So fingers crossed that that goes well, but I'm very lucky to be alive, and I'm very thankful to be talking to you guys today. So continued prayers as I go forward in my car search, because it is not an easy market right now. Unfortunately, a lot of things are shorted, including cars. So anyways, with that being said, we'll actually jump into this video. So I'll kind of put some screenshots up here as I'm talking about each of my DNA things. If again you see me on my phone looking down, I apologize. I'm trying to read everything on the screen here so that I'm not giving you information that's incorrect. So I'll give you a basics on how an Ancestry DNA test works. So I did my test back at the end of 2017. So this, mind you, this was before I'm diabetic, before I even started this channel. So I did this like 9 months before I even had the guts to come on YouTube and start a channel. So you get a kit in the mail. I think I bought it for myself for Christmas. It was like maybe $49 on sale. So they give you basically a little test tube that you have to spit so many milliliters of saliva into, and it can't be that real like foamy saliva. It's got to be the nice regular liquidy saliva that you produce in your mouth. However, I didn't have any dry mouth problems, and I still don't, even being diabetic, but I kind of struggled to fill that little tube up. I had to keep spitting, and you can't eat or drink within like 30 minutes of like taking the test because it can screw with your DNA. So once you fill it in there, and then they allow you to close the tubing, and then it mixes with a preservative to keep your DNA intact. So you kind of shake it back and forth. You'll register your kit online, and usually they have you a prepaid box or envelope to ship that to. And I believe I ended up being shipped to Utah. And actually, my results came rather quickly. It took like maybe, I think 4 weeks to get my results, and it was kind of cool. My results have sort of changed as time went on. Now, when you have an Ancestry DNA account, as they update things and as more people add their DNA to the story, and as more people, you know, find more information regarding the different genetic traits that make up different regions of the world, your percentages can kind of change. And it actually is kind of shocking to me that I have, you know, a certain amount of this and that. And with Ancestry, if you have family members that are registered, they can actually find connections and figure out that you're family. So it was kind of funny that my grandparents did this, and they matched me up to them. And it was kind of cool that I found out I shared 29% of my genetic like makeup with my grandfather and 23% with my grandmother. So this tests are kind of fascinating, not only to show like what part you are, but just because, say, your parents are 50% German and you're 50% and they're 50% German, doesn't mean you're going to be 50% German. You could be a lot less, you could be a lot more. Depends on what type of genes you get when they intermix with, you know, when you're being conceived, and, you know, all the different genes kind of mix. So it's kind of an interesting thing to think about. But in general, you should have pretty similar regions to people that you're related to. So like, for example, a lot of the Eastern European side comes from my mom's side. There's not as much of that on my dad's side. So there's different things that you can kind of look at there and kind of piece together. But anyways, with that being said, I'll actually go through and share exactly my percentages with each different thing. So the first one that comes up for me is Eastern European and Russian, 26%. And this actually shocked me. I knew like my biological grandfather was born in Chicago. His mother was born in Poland. So it was kind of a neat thing to kind of figure that out. And I know for a fact that I had some Eastern European in me, but I didn't realize how much. And my mother's maiden name is actually Czechoslovakian. It is not Polish. But Czechoslovakia, Poland, Lithuania, they're all kind of in the same region, Eastern Europe. So they all probably share very similar DNA. Now, the Russian part, I'm like, what are they talking about Russia? Like, that's Asia. Like, that, what are we talking about Russia? Northwest Russia is very, very close to Eastern European, so a lot of people were probably intermixing with that. So they kind of lumped those two together. And then actually, because a lot of the Eastern European people migrated more recently, they're able to pinpoint me down to very specific communities within these countries that had migrated to the United States. So they pinpointed me specifically to Slovakia and the country of Hungary, very specifically even beyond that, South Poland, Slovakia, and North Hungary. And then they also have me into Eastern and Northern Slovakia as well, and then a very specific region called Zakopane. I have no idea if I pronounced that right. I'm sorry. I'm not originally from those areas, but if any of you have Eastern European and are watching these videos, I am sorry if I butchered any names. But they have me tied down to these very, very specific communities, and it's kind of a neat thing to kind of look at that. And then if you actually click on Ancestry DNA, it'll kind of go through and show you like the timeline of how all these different groups of people kind of migrated to the United States, and kind of maybe when your ancestors actually came to the United States of America, if you're from the United States. Now, if you do this test and you're from another region, they may have more other information regarding like ancestral past and any movements that your ancestors may have made to other countries. So the next piece is the exact same percentage. 26% is Germanic Europe, so that kind of includes just the Germany, Dutch, Netherlands kind of area. I know my family's heavily German as well. German in general is pretty big in America. I think a lot of German immigration came, especially if you're from the Midwest. Wisconsin is a big German state. There's a lot of German roots here, as well as a lot of Polish roots. There's a lot of Polish towns around here. So it doesn't surprise me that I also have some Germanic Europe in me. My grandmother, my mother's mother, is definitely highly German. Her last name is a highly German name, or maiden name. But what's funny is I believe her father, who has the German last name, was born in Poland. So, Germany and Poland probably did a lot of intermixing as well. So who knows if maybe I have more Eastern European from my grandma's side, as well as her husband, who was my grandfather, that was born in Chicago. Like, you kind of sit there and think about, like, okay, how much mixing and mingling was kind of going on, and you think you're this, and this, but you're really not. So the next percentage, highest percentage, which is kind of shocking because we didn't really think, at least on my dad's side, that there was a lot of this, was England and Northwest Europe. So you're talking about Britain, Wales, I think they have Ireland separately, but pretty much anything in that English area. It kind of shocked me that I quite a bit of English in me, but my whole name is pretty English. My last name, Nielsen, is highly Danish, which I'll get into shortly here. They have that broken down in just a second. The next highest percentage, as I just mentioned, is Sweden and Denmark. So they have Sweden and Denmark are two countries next to one another in kind of east of England. And my last name, Nielsen, Nielsen, literally means son of Neil. If you have S-O-N, that is an English last name that also means son of. So it's kind of interesting how like last names often have like an ancestral root to them, and mine is Danish. And Denmark and Sweden, as I said, are pretty much right next to one another, but they kind of lump them together because I'm guessing, again, probably a lot of intermixing and intermingling kind of happened between those two countries over time, and a lot of similar genetic information and DNA was kind of mingled together like that. So that's kind of my next percentage. And then 7% comes from Baltics. Now, again, that's kind of in the Eastern European area. It's kind of like the Belarus, Slovakian kind of regions. There's some other middle countries in there, kind of wedged between the Germanic and the very Eastern Europe. So apparently I have like 7% Baltics. Guessing that's from my mom's side, but I don't 100% know. Neither one of my parents have done the tests. My grandparents haven't. Had a couple of other cousins and friends do the test. But I'd be kind of curious, like, if I tested my mom, like, how much, similarity do I have to her as opposed to my dad? Not saying, like, you're not. And again, you're probably, you think about it, you're half your mom, half your dad, but you might be like genetically wise with ancestry. Like on my dad's side, like I share more genetic DNA commonalities with my grandfather than I do my grandmother, which kind of makes sense because I actually probably look more of that side of the family than anything. But that's kind of how that breaks down. And then actually the 6% is Norway. So Norway must have its own kind of specific genetic makeup or genetic something that they can read on those genetic material that makes it unique from like Sweden and Denmark. Again, it's a little further west, and it probably has a little bit more separation with oceans. So again, Norwegian countries, anything Northern Europe is pretty much me, because look at us, very pale face. And then the final percentage, which is very low, but most people would say, take one look at me and say Irish, is Ireland. I have 3% Irish in me, and I believe I had a great-great-grandparent that was pretty gosh darn close to 100% Irish. At least that's what we think, but who knows? She may have been like 90% or something like that and had a little bit of something else. You truly don't know, because obviously these people have passed away and you can't exactly test their saliva considering they're no longer here. But I only have 3% Irish in me, but honestly, most people would take one look at me and say, yeah, you're definitely Irish based on your skin and your hair color, the stereotypical strawberry blonde or red hair and really pale skin and freckles is evident of Ireland. However, any Northern European country, you're going to be bound to be very pale complected and often have white hair anyway. It's kind of a unique thing to think about. And actually, you think about like darker eyes being from other countries. I have hazel eyes, which I'll put a picture of here. If you look really, really closely at my eyes, they may look very brown to you. And I think in some pictures that you guys see of me, when you look at my eyes from a distance, they're very much look brown, but they are not. They are hazel. They're actually pretty much a muddy green with a little bit of brown on the inside, and then the outside's kind of like a really dark blue ring. But they're saying like hazel eyes also pinpoints to like European, Northern European people. So yeah, I'm pretty much like Northern and Central Europe, Eastern Europe, pretty much everything but Southern Europe, like not much Italian, Spanish. I don't have any Native American in me. We thought maybe we did on my dad's side, but we don't. And really the only part of Asia that I touch is Northwest Russia, which is very, very different from Eastern Asia, which has a lot of more distinct looks. So that is my actual DNA based portion. Now I'll delve into exactly what the traits are for Ancestry DNA, and kind of how I went about that. And then this is something I just kind of figured out on Ancestry DNA, and it's super duper fun. So traits thing you have to pay for. I think I paid $20 for it, but it's a one-time access to everything, and it takes your DNA and it takes the chromosomal pieces and kind of finds that there's some different interesting things regarding physical looks and some other interesting things that I'll share with you that kind of shocked me that they can actually test for with your genetics. And they're able to share this information with you. So this says, welcome to Traits. Ever wondered where your freckles come from or why you hate cilantro? Discover clues in your DNA about where these and lots of other traits come from. Also see how they relate to geographic regions in your DNA results and compare traits with your matches. But first, a quick genetics lesson. Because Maddie's obsessed with genetics, she's going to read this too. So DNA is the instruction manual for all living things. DNA actually stands for deoxyribose nucleic acid. I pulled that right out of my head. It is separated into long, tightly wound pieces called chromosomes. So people typically have 46 chromosomes grouped into 23 pairs. So if you think about it, you'll get half your chromosomes from mom, half your chromosomes from dad. They mix together to create one unique human being. So that's kind of the process of how life can blend itself together. So all about genes. So genes are pieces of DNA within each chromosome that have the instructions for many of your traits. So chromosomes are kind of a weird shaped thing. They have different lengths. And when they kind of get paired up, some of them can kind of look like this. They kind of look like little, I'm trying to picture, so like, imagine my fingers laying like this and then my other fingers laying upright. It can kind of look kind of funny like that. And then sometimes it can look like two long strings slightly bent together. So anyway, genes are pieces of DNA within each chromosome that have the instructions for many of your traits, from eye color to if you're going to end up with a unibrow. So you have two copies of each gene, one inherited from each parent. So specific places in your DNA are called markers, genetic or gene markers, very specific areas. So there's 23 chromosome pairs, 46 total. So if you imagine like chromosome 2 and you get a copy of chromosome 2 from mom's genetic information, a copy of chromosome 2 from dad's genetic information, they kind of bond together. And if you have two of the exact same specific markers, it's often going to show up on that person. And that kind of helps determine dominant versus non-dominant traits. For example, you all know I have very strawberry blonde hair. I kind of blend in with my background here. Very much red. A very light red. It's not like a bright carrot red, but in order to get that, my mom and dad both had to have copies of that recessive trait and had it line up specifically for me to have that. Both of my parents are brunette, so it's kind of an interesting thing how genes work. And also, like, there are redheads on both sides of their family, so obviously they carry the genes. They just didn't express them themselves until somehow it magically aligned for me to end up with copies of a specific gene to make red hair. Or actually, it's a lack of a very specific gene called MC1R. So, random fact there. So your genotype, it's the DNA. So genotype is like the type of gene you get. So it says scientists have found that some markers are associated with specific traits. There you go, like red hair. A certain marker, your genotype, is a combination of two letters, like AA is what helps us determine whether you're likely to have red hair or not. So genes and environment. So actually your genotype is what your genes say, but your phenotype is what you actually have. So pheno meaning physical, so what you physically have. So sometimes what you see in the mirror is different from what your genotype is because traits are influenced by other factors. So things like recessive traits versus dominant traits or other factors like the actual environment. So passing on says everyone inherits half their DNA from one parent, half from the other. This is why traits tend to run in families. You get half of your DNA from each of your parents. You've got half of theirs from each of their parents and so on. But the particular mix of DNA you inherit is unique to you. So there really is no unique, no single human being on earth that isn't unique. So now those are the basics, and it says you're ready to explore things from like exercise to vitamin, deficiencies or insufficiencies on here. So I guess I'll go through all of them here. There's not really too many. So we'll start with fitness. So it says endurance fitness. So my DNA suggests I may be less likely to have athletic performance similar to elite endurance athletes. I would agree with that because Maddie is not a very talented athlete. But it says science says exercise can benefit endurance, but all exercise is not created equal. High intensity activities like sprinting may increase endurance. So then you can actually kind of answer the question, and then it gives you like more facts like known genetics. It's actually tested into 3 different places, and all these different places all have letter number combinations that are miles long, which is amazing to me how they could pinpoint very specific things. And they also say that there's other factors that determine if you're really athletic or not too, saying like how much you're doing it to nutrition that you're eating, and then there's also always information that we're always discovering. So heart rate recovery is the next one. It says your DNA suggests your heart may recover at a quicker rate from exercise. I would say so for the most part if I keep up with my cardiovascular exercise. Now, I had gotten into a point where I wasn't as cardiovascularly doing things, and it definitely takes me a little bit longer. However, I've definitely had better cardiovascular fitness than I did when I was in high school. I've definitely put more effort into keeping myself healthy, and my heart rate recovers pretty quickly. However, sometimes I'll have times where like it doesn't, I guess, but like when I do walking and stuff, and it'll be like, it'll get a little bit elevated. Sometimes if I run, it actually doesn't go super high, which is interesting, surprisingly, because I feel like it should be super high. But I'm not really, I would say yes, but I'd also say I think there's so much more that influences heart rate recovery. Muscle fatigue, this is interesting. It says your DNA may tell us that your muscles may tire out at an average rate. So they're basically saying if I was to go out and exercise, that my muscles would tire at a normal rate versus not going too quickly or too slowly. And it says science's researchers have shown that stretching before exercise, being hydrated, and gradually increasing activity may help reduce muscle fatigue. So there's all this different information in there. It's just super cool. Sprinter gene. Your DNA tells us that you don't have the sprinter gene. They looked at one specific gene that plays a role in how your muscles work, but when it comes to athletic activity, DNA is just one part of the picture. True. However, I will say this, I'm a better sprinter than I am a long distance runner. So, but I wouldn't say like I have this super duper awesome sprinting capability, so it probably is a reason why I don't have that gene. Vo2 Max, which is like your volume of your oxygen, like right inside your lungs, like how much you can hold in. And there's people with your DNA of yours may have a higher than average ability to raise Vo2 max through regular exercise. So what Vo2 max is the maximum amount of oxygen your body can use during intense exercise. So basically, the more you exercise, the better your body becomes more efficient at using oxygen for energy and using that to power your cells. So it's basically saying I have the genetic information to, if I continue to have regular exercise, it's going to increase my VO2. Now it's funny, I have my Apple Watch tracking my VO2, and I think mine has actually gone up, and I think mine's in the 30s, and I think that's slightly above average for a woman. I don't know for sure, don't quote me on it, but it's another interesting thing, I guess. So that was everything for like fitness, and then there's actually nutrient ones now. So beta carotene. So it says people with DNA like yours tend to have typical levels of beta carotene. So it's just basically saying my genetic influence is probably less likely going to mean that I'm going to end up with a beta carotene deficiency. So that's in things like green leafy vegetables, orange fruits, vegetables, tomatoes, things like that. Carrots, sweet potatoes. Next one is omega-3, and it says people with DNA like yours can sometimes have typical omega-3 levels. Can sometimes have. So I think everybody can be a little bit deficient on omega-3 if you're not eating enough of it. Omega-6 is probably more commonly consumed. But they look at two specific genes on chromosome 6, one on chromosome 6, and one specific gene on chromosome 11. So then they're saying that omega-3 is often influenced by the things you eat. So if you think about things like salmon is a really, really big, and specific fishes are very, very big into omega-3. So I always try to eat some sort of fish that's high in omega-3. I don't take omega-3 supplements. I do take vitamin D supplements. But I just try to eat a wide variety, so I don't really think I have a deficiency in omega-3, but something to keep in mind. Vitamin B12, and then there's just people with DNA like yours tends to have typical levels of vitamin B12. So things like dairy, seafood, and eggs have B12. People who have vegetarians and vegans that don't necessarily eat meat, they have to usually elevate their levels with some sort of supplement. Vitamin C. So people with DNA like yours tend to have typical vitamin C levels. So if you know what scurvy is, that is the disease associated a long time ago when we had people sailing on the oceans without fresh fruit or vegetables to kind of get their vitamin C in. But I believe it was also common in Ireland during the potato famine, since potatoes were their main source of vitamin C. So if you don't have enough of it, it can actually damage the gum tissue and kind of cause your teeth to fall out. And I don't think you hear of scurvy much anymore, and I take vitamin C and supplements every day, and naturally if you get exposed to enough fresh fruit and vegetable, you're going to have enough. Random fact, vitamin C your body cannot store, so whatever you eat in a day, it is whatever's excess is peed away. So you better have to have more than you are to have less, but vitamin C is big for immune system health too. So vitamin D, here's where I come into play. These people with DNA like yours tend to have average vitamin D levels. That's probably because I'm fair complected, so I'm probably more likely to absorb sunlight and be able to synthesize my own vitamin D. However, being of my descent, according to my endocrinologist, and not going out as much as maybe ancestors did outdoors in the winter and things like that, I can have a lower level. Now, my level was slightly insufficient, so I had to take 3,000 units a day in order to bump my levels up, but now I have them up to a normal range. So, and then the last one is vitamin E, and it says people with DNA like yours tend to have vitamin E levels. Vitamin E was discovered in 1922 when scientists studied pregnancy in rats and found that it was needed for a healthy pregnancy. They first called it factor X, but eventually renamed it tocopherol from the Greek word for birth and to carry. So that's interesting. I did not realize that they studied rats and pregnant rats. But that's everything with the nutrients section. There's things like sensory section as well. Appearance section, which is rather interesting too. So I'll go through just a couple on the sensory section. I won't go through everything. I did the first two through everything because there wasn't as many what we would call traits. But the sensory, I'll just kind of pick a couple of them and go through them. So things like this was interesting to me. alcohol flush. Your face probably doesn't turn red after drinking alcohol. And that is a big fat lie. My face is already red, and I am on YouTube here. So, it's funny that they asked you the question to take the survey, and a lot of people of my descent apparently, like, said that they do flush when they drink alcohol. Like, I can feel instantly when I have alcohol in my body. So, alcohol flush is caused by a genetic difference that makes it harder for the body to process alcohol. Yeah. While anyone can be affected by the phenomena, approximately 35% of East Asians from China, Japan, and Korea experience an alcohol flush reaction. Well, I don't have any of that in me, but my face turns red after anything, so I definitely think I've got that. This one's funny. And this is not true for me either. So some of these is interesting. You have the genetics, but it's truly the gene for it, but it may not necessarily hold true. So again, genotype versus phenotype. You may have a trait, but whether or not it's expressed is a different story. So asparagus metabolite detection. Your DNA suggests you might not notice a distinctive smell when you pee after eating asparagus. That is false. I know what my pee smells like after eating asparagus. I can smell it myself. So I have the genetic marker for it. But so we looked at one key marker or location to estimate whether or not you noticed the telltale asparagus pee odor. But there's probably more to the genetic story here. So I really, I know when I have asparagus, y'all. I can smell it. I don't know if you can, and I don't want to, if you want to tell me if you can, go for it. I guess this is whatever. But I found that interesting that it was the opposite of what it was, as well as for the alcohol flush. So it goes into different things like that. Rather interesting. So appearance. I guess I'll do probably a few of these here that probably stand out to me the most. So there's things like male hair loss. So as my DNA suggests you or your close male relatives have a low chance of hair loss. So obviously I'm not a male. I don't have male pattern baldness going on. However, I know my grandfather definitely does not have receding hair or anything like that. So I apparently carry the low chance of hair loss. So to my future sons, you're welcome. I guess. But it's kind of interesting because as females too, our hair can thin and do all kinds of interesting things. So I find it interesting that as a female, I guess, of course, it probably is on an X chromosome then, because in order for a male to kind of almost not get the non-falling out hair or the non-receding hair from mom genetics, it has to come from the X chromosome, because in order to be a male, you have to be XY, and the only way a male gets an X is from his mom. So it probably is something on the X chromosome as far as that is concerned, or probably something like that in order for it to be inherited from mom. Another interesting one, wisdom teeth. So this is the DNA we tested suggested you probably developed all of your wisdom teeth. Yes, I did. And they're all gone. I had all 4 of mine pulled when I was 17. So, it's kind of interesting how they can pinpoint that. And actually, as a random fact, the further along we go, the less likely people are to be developing wisdom teeth now, just because, again, evolution, that gene is kind of falling out of there. But I had all 4 of mine, so kudos to me, I guess, right? I had everything. Skin pigmentation. Your DNA suggests you have light to medium skin tone. Why don't we just say pale, okay? I'm going to put a picture here and shows you exactly how pale my skin is. This is my natural hair color and my natural skin tone in summer. So you can only imagine how much sunscreen I put on myself. I am a ghost. This is my inner arm. This is my inner bicep. This is very pale. The darkest I get in the summer is probably right here. Maybe a touch darker. I really do not have the best skin tone for the sun. I literally burn. And yeah, this is why Maddie lives in sunscreen. So kind of interesting again how they can figure that out. This one was interesting to me again too. Iris patterns. Again, I'll put a picture of my eye up here, and it says my DNA suggests I have 3 types of eye catching iris patterns: furrows, crypts, and rings. So furrows, I definitely know for sure when I've looked closely at my eyes, I can see the furrows. They kind of look like starbursts kind of around the pupil. Crypts, they say, are more like the little flashy little diamond-y type shapes in the eyes, and those come more often the older you get. And then rings are just literally little like tree rings that go around the eyes. So apparently I have the genetic make up for all three, but I've only see really, truly, I only see the furrows in my eyes. I don't really see the others. Kind of looks like a starburst pattern. I don't really know how to describe it. So hair type. Hard for you to tell because I was at work and it kind of flattens my hair out a little bit, but the DNA we tested suggests your hair is naturally wavy. Yes, it is. If you've seen videos, my hair has kind of got a little natural wave to it. Even you can kind of see here. There's just a little bit of a bend to it. I used to have very, very tight curls. I'll put a picture here too. I used to have super tight curly hair when I was really little, as well as super light blonde hair, and then kind of transitioned to the redder color the older I got. So yeah, I guess it's another thing that they can figure out about your genetics for your hair. So that's interesting. This one, hair color. It looks like you got the DNA for lighter hair. Da 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 da. I've got the genetic DNA for red hair. This is rather an interesting thing to kind of think about. So it says, does your natural hair color match what we suggested? While we know many of the genes involved in hair color, we can't always tell how these genes will produce to make your unique hue. Then they asked me like what color hair I had. So I said I had red or reddish hair. And it says hair color in Ireland. 8% of the Ancestry DNA members who have this region answered the survey the same way you did. Again, red hair is kind of that stereotypically associated with Ireland. I guess next to here. Freckles. Your DNA suggests that you probably have freckles. Oh yeah. Again, I'll put some pictures here. They especially come out in the summer big time, but you probably can't see them from here, but they are everywhere. I look like a pockmarked girl with all these freckles. But it says, while you might see freckles more among people with red hair and fair skin. Hi. The gene variations can also cause freckles are found worldwide, including in Asia, Africa, and the Americas. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Finger length. Your DNA tells us your index or pointer finger may be longer than your ring finger. Oh yes, definitely. You guys see that? So this finger is longer than this finger here. Isn't that interesting? That's cool. While we know genes play a role in determining digit ratio or the relative length of your index and ring fingers. It says a female who shared the womb with her male twin will have a longer ring finger than she might have had otherwise because she was exposed to her brother's testosterone. That's just interesting. I don't have a male twin, but I'm like, oh, I just read that and I thought that was super cool. Again, I paid $20 and I get all this really awesome information that I can go back and read on. So to me, it's so worth the $20 for this. And then the last one I'll pick on here is just something basic, eye color. From your DNA, it looks like you probably have dark eyes. I do. Eye color is one of the more well-studied traits, but science still doesn't have the answers. We looked at our 4 significant markers or locations to estimate the color of your eyes. It says originally all humans likely had brown eyes, but around 10,000 years ago, a genetic variation popped up around the Black Sea that likely led to blue eyes. So what's interesting is I was also reading that just because you have 2 brown-eyed parents doesn't mean that your child will have brown eyes. There's so many more, there's like 16 or 20 different genetic markers that can cause eye color. However, the darker eyes are more of a dominant trait, so therefore if you have dark-eyed parents, you're probably more likely to have dark eyes yourself. However, I have hazel eyes and my mother has like a light green color and kind of a greenish blue, so I know for sure I carry that gene. That and I'm hazel from my dad, but I ended up with hazel. So and also a lot of my dad's siblings have lighter colored blue or blue-gray eyes, so you carry those traits. It'd be kind of interesting to see like if I had a kid that ended up with blue eyes. So I guess we'll kind of see how that kind of goes. It'd be kind of interesting to figure that out. But to me, all eye colors are really interesting, no matter what. But what's cool is it's not a one-time shot where you think, oh yeah, for sure, if someone has brown eyes but you have blue eyes, that you're going to have brown-eyed kids no matter what. No, that's not always the case. Because say somebody with brown eyes technically got a brown-eyed trait and a light-eyed color trait, they carry the genotype for light eyes, but they only express the phenotype for dark eyes. So therefore, if, say, you end up with somebody that's dark eyes as well, and I have dark eyes, and I obviously carry my mother's light blue-green eye trait, and say they carried a light blue-eye trait, the right combination together could create a blue-eyed child from 2 dark-eyed parents. So it's kind of an interesting thing to think about. And also think about like look at my hair color. Now, both my parents being darker hair, I ended up with red hair. Again, it has to be carrying both traits from parents to have that aligned together to literally create that specific look. Now, again, hair color as well. Like, so obviously, even if, say, my children end up with darker hair than me because brown hair is dominant to lighter hair, or say they end up with a different variation of lighter hair, like an actual true blonde, they will probably they will carry for sure one red-haired trait. Now, if they don't express it themselves, they get with another person later on, I could have red-haired grandchildren. So it's kind of, it's what you have phenotype, which is what you physically express, versus genotype, which is what it's in your genes. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this little story time video random about Ancestry DNA and how much information it can give you. And if you haven't done Ancestry DNA, I would encourage you to. It's kind of a very interesting thing to kind of slowly learn about yourself, and it's constantly changing. You can also pay more to kind of delve more into your family's background. I've thought about it, but right now I'm just kind of happy with learning as I go kind of thing. But anyways, this is the kind of stuff I love to dig into when I have spare time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. Feel free to hit that subscribe button. I post as often as I can about type 1 diabetes plus more. Please stay tuned. I have so many more videos that I want to do. I hope you all are doing well so far through the start of 2022. And if I don't hop on here before, happy early Valentine's Day. Kind of, my mind is blowing that it's like February already, and like we're almost 1/6 of the way through 2022, and I feel like I'm 23 years old, and I feel like time just flies, and you think at my age, like, it would go so slow, but it really, to me, it doesn't. So, anyways, I hope you guys are doing well, and that you're staying safe and healthy, and I hope to see you in my next video. So, until next time, for another video, take care, God bless, be kind, spread positivity, and be thankful, and I love you all so much. Thank you for all your support, and prayers and good wishes, and again, I hope to see you guys in my next video. Bye, everyone.